Running with Jake, the quick hit.
Hi, this is Jake from Running with Jake, the podcast. Full episodes are released every Wednesday, but this is the quick hit, which is audio taken from one of the live videos on my social channels. This one is from the Instagram lives that I do every Friday with ex-GB athlete, fellow coach, and my friend Joe Wilkinson. To follow us both on Instagram, just search for Running with Jake and Running Joe 10K. Let's get into it.
This week we are talking about pre-race nerves. The downside of getting back to racing. We have been desperate for races all of the last year, but now they're back. What do we find? We're feeling really, really nervous. And I, for one, can promise you that I am as subject to pre-race nerves as everybody else. So, how do you manage them? Do we want them? Are they a good thing? Can you ever get rid of them? Do you want to get rid of them? I'm now desperately filling because very soon I'm going to be joined with my very good friend and fellow coach and fellow Insta Live Friday person, Running with Jake. And I think I've got a feeling that he might be in the midst of very, very bad pre-race nerves. Hello, Jake.
Oh, all right. I love it when you fumble a bit and you're sort of trying to tread water. I'm filling.
So honestly, nobody would have noticed if you hadn't drawn attention to it.
Oh, yeah? Are you well? Are you good?
Yeah, I am good. I'm pretty good. Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm a bit nervous.
Why is that, Jake?
Let me have a little think. This is a very apt topic today, isn't it? A chat around race day nerves.
It is, but do you know what? I'm feeling nervous because if we don't manage to nail nerves, then how are you going to nail your nerves for your race?
Oh gosh, I have a race on Sunday, the Hullivington Half Marathon. Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, a little bit of nerves. It's funny, isn't it? It's a funny topic, to be honest.
They are a funny old thing as well. It's only running, isn't it?
Do you know one of the things?
So why do we feel nervous?
Well,
sorry.
No, don't be. You took the thought out of my head, actually, the words out of my mouth, because I was thinking of about this earlier. It's about rationalizing, isn't it? To a degree. It is just running. It is just a race. It is just an event, whatever it is we've signed up for. It isn't life or death. If we complete the event, we're all going to get the banana at the end, or the t-shirt, or the medal, or the cake, in my case, at the end of the Hullivington Half. So actually, does it really matter? Well, of course, the event matters to us. And maybe if you set yourself a target time, and there's a little bit of pressure that creeps up. So I guess what I'm saying here is I think it's really about balance, Joe. I think that's so important because some nerves are healthy, right? You need a little bit of nerves to give you a bit of an edge. And I think if you kind of think about nerves, you tend to get more nervous the closer you get to the race, don't you? It sort of makes sense. But I think if you can kind of almost spread your nerves a little bit more evenly, if you like, and if you can feel a bit nervous in training, it might help you to step up to the plate. It might help you to commit to your sessions because you need to be better prepared. You need to prepare yourself well, so that you have maybe slightly less nerves come race day. So that I do think there's a place for it.
So Simon has just said you're nervous because you care. And that's the very first note I have on my sheet of paper here, because it means something. And I say, actually, that my big thing is all about performance. What makes performance? Well, planning, preparation, that's all your training. But actually, passion and pressure as well. They have a function because it's got to mean something. There's got to be something you want to succeed in, something you really want, because that passion is going to push you that little bit further in the race. And that's what nerves are, because, you're sort of testing yourself and you want this to be better than training. You want to achieve something. So that meaning something is good. And I think when people say I don't have nerves, I always think, do you really care then? Are you really going out there to give it everything if you really honestly say you have no nerves? I think they are a good thing. That doesn't mean they are a pleasant thing because I think they can be horrific.
I think Simon makes a really good point. It is absolutely because you care, because it matters to you for whatever reason, your why behind that event and target time, finishing, raising money for a charity. You know, it could be a number of things, really. And it does show that it means something to you, and therefore it has weight and magnitude. But I still think it is about that balance. And also, some people deal with nerves in different ways, and they, you know, it's like pressure, isn't it? We don't all deal with the same amount of pressure in the same way. And I suppose, you know, I come at it from an angle of, if somebody feels really nervous about a race, and I know I've dealt with a few runners in the past where one springs to mind in particular, obviously I won't mention the name, and they almost got to the point where they were so nervous about the race that they didn't enjoy the whole process, the lead up to it, during. That balance was way off, you know, and you just think that's a real shame that it's reached that point. So I think there are certain tools that we need to use, you know, pull out of our toolbox, to just a bit of mind management, because that's what it's about, isn't it? It's not the physical stuff, really, although those nerves result in physical feelings, hands clammy, you know, heart starts to pound a bit, you feel a bit chilly, all those things. But it starts inside the mind. So if we can just sort of manage, rationalize a little bit, you know, ask yourself, and I do this myself, by the way, I kind of joke / you know, partly serious about the race on Sunday. And I don't super care about it, you know, massively, the outcome and things. Obviously, I want a good occasion. I want a good day. But I have certainly felt very nervous about races in the past, and I've sort of built it up. And if you're not careful, it can run away with you. It can kind of snowball, that feeling. And you can then be in danger of experiencing what, you know, the lady I mentioned many years ago was feeling, where she almost took the fun out of the running. And I think that is a real shame. So you've just got to keep yourself in check a little bit, I think. A little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It is always a shame when you see a runner that's so crippled by nerves that they then don't perform at their best, or, you know, some people just stop racing because they can't deal with those nerves, and or they just, you know, somebody commented on a post I wrote earlier about, you know, I was crying before I started. You don't want to be in that state, but as you say, nerves have a physical impact. Sorry?
Cry afterwards. You want the emotion afterwards.
With joy, hopefully. But also, actually, nerves do have a physical role, because they are often a symptom of adrenaline. Now, we want adrenaline because it, you know, the whole very classic fight or flight, it powers us to do things. So that's, as you say, it is getting the balance. It is managing your nerves so that you have them and you can experience them in a positive way to get you mentally and physically ready to do this great performance that you want to do, but not so much so that it then becomes something that's negative and unpleasant and actually takes away from the performance. But I think we all have our own little coping mechanism. So what would you say is how do you deal with them, either before or in the run up to a race? What would you say is your kind of number one tip?
I guess there's two things I've got here, Jo, really, that spring to mind. The first one, and not in any particular order, would be to ask myself what I'm nervous about. What is it? Is it completion? Because as somebody that's, you know, let's use a half marathon example. I've done loads of half marathons. I regularly run 13 plus miles in training. The distance doesn't, you know, worry me. So what is it then if it's not the distance? Have I attached maybe an ambitious time, maybe too much of an ambitious time for me to the actual race? Is it that I feel nervous about? Maybe it's a really hilly course and I'm nervous about the stress level that is provided by the hills. Maybe it's nutrition, maybe it's stomach upset. You know, you've got to ask yourself, what is, you know, let's get real with this. Why am I nervous about this? Is it because what my friends will think when I upload the session? Am I trying to prove something? You know, we mentioned Strava a lot. Is that an issue? Because you can't really manage it. We're talking about getting the balance right and managing the mind, but you kind of need to know why you're getting that feeling. We know that there's a place for nerves, as we've said, absolutely. And if it's gone too far, you perhaps need to rein it in a bit. That's the long and the short of it, in my mind. How do you rein it in? Well, ask yourself, what is it you're nervous about? So for me, it could vary depending on the event. So when I first kind of did races, let's say my first marathon, I wasn't particularly nervous because I was relatively confident about the distance. And I didn't really have any expectations, Jo, because I didn't really set myself some ambitious time because I didn't really know what I was capable of. Sure enough, you do your first one, then the next time around you go, now all of a sudden I'm going to put some pressure on me because I know what I've done and can I beat that? Then you can get more nerves. So you've got to ask yourself, what is it you're nervous about? And secondly, I think if you listen to the likes of Simon Sinek, who's a great inspirational speaker, really curious question. He will say, well, how do you know you're nervous? Because what's the physical difference symptoms-wise between being nervous and being excited? Your hands feel clammy, your heart starts to increase, you feel a little bit shivery, you're a little bit jittery, a bit on edge. So how do you know it's not nerves or excitement or a combination of the two? And sometimes just by changing your thought and your language a little bit in your mind, well, maybe I feel excited here. Maybe I'm pretty charged about this race on Sunday. I'm feeling up for it. All of a sudden, how you feel can change a little bit. If that makes some sense to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my background, my professional background, as you know, is actually as a social worker. And I used to do a lot of anxiety management with people, using a kind of cognitive behavioural approach, which is looking at, in very simplistic terms, thinking about how you think and addressing what we call some of those thinking errors. And actually that's really transferable to managing nerves, because again, nerves is a form of anxiety. It's a physical feeling, but how you think about that and how you interpret that can then change how you manage it. So, there's things about, you were saying, what is it that I'm actually nervous about? So that's kind of actually, what we call, challenging the statements that you're making. So if you're saying, well, I'm worried I'm going to come last. So then it's a case of, well, if you come last, what does that mean? When you look at the people come last, what do you think? You probably don't even think anything. Nobody else is going to think anything. I'm worried that I'm going to need the toilet, but you never need the toilet. So it's always taking the negative thoughts that you've got and just challenging them and kind of logically kind of thinking, well, this will happen, that will happen, or how likely is it going to be? So, actually verbalizing it, I find really helps. And it just sort of takes the pressure off in some ways, because it's a case of, well, even if you say the other phrase you're using, CBT, is catastrophizing. So this will happen, and then that will happen, and then this, and then I'll die. No, you won't. It's just a run.
Yeah. Doomsday thinking. Doomsday thinking we want to avoid. I like that, Joe. Yeah, I like the challenging. Challenge yourself, as we always should. Why? Question it. What, and ask yourself, what is realistically the worst that can happen? Being abducted by aliens at Mile 4 is not realistic. Realistically, what is the worst that can happen? And if you can sort of get your head around that, which you will be able to, and you will develop that skill, the more you apply this, the more races you do start to go through this process, I think you'll be able to control things a little bit more. And again, just find that balance. So it is more kind of nervous excitement. You want the amount of nerves that's going to help you to perform the best on the day of your race. And sometimes nerves can mean, depending on the individual, that you're ready, that you're in good shape, because you know what you're capable of. I mention the podcast every single time we speak. And this week we spoke with Laura Waitman. And Laura said exactly that when she's feeling most nervous is when she knows she's ready. And that's where she puts pressure on herself to perform, because she knows that she's in good shape because of the training and the sessions that she's done and through all of her experience and stuff. So there's upsides and downsides to this, aren't there, Joe? And we just want to make sure that when you go into a race, I heard as you were fumbling at the start, you were saying, we're back racing, this is amazing. And we want to really enjoy that and embrace that. So let's just make sure that we're steering all those emotions a little bit more towards excitement, and perhaps taking a little bit away from sheer, doomsday thinking nerves and things. And challenging yourself is definitely a good way to do that.
Yeah. And I think the other one, linking back, so last week we talked about warm-ups, and you just then mentioned something about control. And that to me is absolutely key to that immediate kind of, well, when I say immediate, that sort of post-race, actually, turn up on the day routine. Have a warm-up routine. Because obviously, as we said last week, it's really physiologically and actually psychologically good for you. It means you can start your race where you want to start it. But B, it will help you control nerves. Because if you have a nice, familiar warm-up routine that you go through, it will focus your mind on the immediate. What am I doing? I'm warming up. I'm doing some high knees. I'm doing some leg swing, whatever it is, rather than that thinking that we talked about, it's going to be terrible, this is going to happen, I'm so nervous. It focuses you on the familiarity, the routine, just gives you a sense of control over what you're doing and a sense of control over the timings as well. So I do say to people, the only thing you have to be aware of is factor in the toilet time. And one of my runners said to me, I'm really looking forward to you telling me how I don't go to the toilet 25 times. So I just want to say, Caroline, I'm going to let you down because I have no idea how you don't go to the toilet 25 times. But I do find it helps me manage the nerves because then I think, come on, you've been 25 times. Therefore, there is physiologically, I'm pretty sure, no way there's anything left to come out in this race.
Well, I think everybody can relate to that, can't they? For sure. Everybody can absolutely relate to that. And seeing as we're on this topic, you know me, I'm very honest. I will share everything. Don't tune off, by the way, guys. It's not that graphic. But one of the things you asked me earlier, what I'm nervous about, what I can feel nervous about and stuff. And it depends on the race, as I mentioned to you. But I went through a period for quite a long time where stopping for the toilet, because obviously I had done in races, was a concern of mine. And it got into my head where I thought this is, you know, it had happened a few times in training, having to cut a session short because I needed the toilet, or, you know, I had to get organized and plan things so that I'd always pass the toilet or be en route to home, do loops or whatever. So then in a race, you know, you get caught short in these situations. And I'm sure you guys can understand where I'm coming from here. It's not the easiest thing to do. It's not just like jump in a bush and have a wee. So, and then it starts to get in my head and I start to worry about it and start to feel that anxiety, because as you said earlier, nerves, anxiety are linked, and anxiety is really when a decision hasn't been reached. It's like the unknown. It's like, oh, what's going to happen? Which is why you're saying at the start of a race, you know, control the controllables, do a nice warm-up routine, because that isn't the unknown. You can control that. So back to sort of in the race, I sort of used to worry about it. And then I said to myself once, and I don't remember the defining moment, I said, Jake, just if you stop, guess what? You stop. And that's it. And you might lose a bit of time because you're in a portaloo. So what? What's the worst that can happen? And sure enough, almost immediately, that is less of a concern of mine, and it doesn't happen anywhere near as often. Because I do think that building it up and the stress and the fear and, you almost talk yourself into situations. So whatever it is that you find you are nervous about, whether it's toilet stops like me or something else, just rationalize, manage, so to try to box things off a little bit. And just by having more of a relaxed approach and a relaxed attitude, I think it helps you feel better about the whole thing.
And I think as well, don't, you know, kind of embrace your nerves and accept them as well, is what I say. Don't think that you have to get rid of them. You know, just everybody is nervous. Everybody has different things they're nervous about. Just accept that that's part of it. And, you know, practice it. Practice that nervous feeling in training sometimes. I think you touched on that right at the beginning. Well, you know, is it good, a little bit of tingling nerves in training? I think that's no bad thing, because it does teach you that, okay, they're nerves, but they're fine. And just, kind of, it just, you know, like I say, see it as part of the whole race experience that is going to enhance your run. And if the worst happens, it's probably not as bad as you think it's going to be. Whether it's needing to stop for the toilet, whether it's coming last, or whether it's just not running as fast as you wanted. I know how gutting that feels, but, you know, you learn from it, you move on, and next time you'll know how to deal with it better. So there is no really bad outcome. You know,
we hear about mindfulness a lot, don't we, in this life at the moment? And I'm a big believer in that. I think it's a really powerful tool to be aware of how you feel, not necessarily kind of do anything about it or act necessarily. Sometimes it's important to. But I think if you are aware of those feelings and those emotions, you can sometimes, you know, rationalize, but almost you can understand it and almost give it perhaps a reason. Whereas if you don't really know how you are, because you don't really have that kind of, I suppose, awareness of how you're feeling, then it can be a bit of a free-for-all and you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants. So just understanding that, well, this is how I feel. I feel nerves, and that could be through something that happened in my childhood. It could be through, you know, something you don't understand. Maybe you are just somebody that experiences nerves more so than the next person. Running aside, just having that awareness, you start to sort of go, okay, I understand how I feel. Okay, right. And then you can, if necessary, think how to act accordingly. Maybe the case that you don't try and act. Like you're saying, Joe, don't try and get rid of all nerves. You know, you don't try to necessarily, you know, rein it all in, But if you feel it's getting away from you too much, because you know how you feel and you're aware of it, you've got that mindfulness, you can just start to put some measures in place. That might be simply going for a walk the day before your race. Just no music, no phone, no, just you, the birds, whatever, just go for a walk, just to, breathe, park. Because what happens, we spoke about the physical symptoms of nerves and those kind of emotions. What happens when we do feel nervous, without knowing, if we haven't got that mindfulness, we almost stop breathing. We're sort of concentrating so much on how we're feeling. Our breath becomes more shallow. Just breathe, the basics, get out, have a little walk on a Saturday before the Sunday. Just settle things down a bit. I think it can help.
I'm a great believer in mantras as well. I think, something just, so mine is always, and I say it, runners I coach will tell you, it's be confident and enjoy it. That's my kind of mantra. And I say that over and over to myself before a race, be confident and enjoy it. And it just, the whole point of a mantra is it just, as I say, provides a bit of focus and takes you away from that kind of overthinking, over catastrophizing, all the rest of it, and that kind of negativity. But the other thing I do as well is I do quite a bit of visualization before a really important race. So I go through it in my mind, and I'll run different scenarios, quite literally, not literally, in my mind. I'll run the different scenarios of what might happen. So I have a bit of a race plan, and I've kind of been there and done it several times mentally, if not physically. And I find, race plans, I always say to people, have a plan, but plans should be flexible and responsive to what's going on the day. But practice all those things in your mind. If I get to this point and I'm running slower than I want, then I'll do this. Or if I get to this point and my rival's pushing ahead, then I'll do that. Or if I get to this point and I'm in front and I'm absolutely flying, then I'll carry on and do this. Run through the race. As you say, in those kind of days beforehand, go for a walk, but run through it in your mind. And then that way you're prepared for pretty much every eventuality that might come along. And you'll find that actually, again, it's a way of managing the nerves, because what I often do when I'm doing that kind of visualization is even feel the nerves beforehand. I can feel myself getting nervous. And again, it's just practicing managing it. And so I used to do it all the time, say in those last few runs before a race, would kind of imagine, I'm on my steady run, but I would imagine and see myself in this part of the run or that part of the run, and really go through how I'm feeling and what I'm going to do. And like I say, then when you come to the actual race, there again, as I said about the warm-up, is that feeling of familiarity and control, right? I know what to do in this situation. I know what to think in this situation. Therefore, I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to run much better.
Yeah, having a plan A, plan B, plan C, and maybe even more is definitely important, being adaptable in the race to the situation, because you've got somewhere to go then in your mind and therefore physically if something isn't going your way. How do you adjust? How do you adapt? And you can feel better in the race. And also the whole controllables thing. You mentioned warm-up. How many people feel nervous about the weather? I'll be honest. Years ago, I found a website that did it was something ridiculous, Joe. This website I found that was like a 4-week forecast for the weather of London. And you think, what are you doing, man? This is insane. You can't control the weather. It is what it is. Everybody has to deal with it on the day, just like you. Just roll with it. Don't feel nervous about that. Just park it and just do as well as you can on the day. And remember that every single race that you ever do is always going to be an amazing training session for you. It's an opportunity to learn, to gain experience, to be around other people, all those things that gaining fitness that you can use to plot the path forward and continue running and racing. So I'm excited now, Joe. I was nervous and I'm not.
No, that's it.
I'm excited. Come on, let's do it, man.
You just go out there and do it, yeah?
Yeah, why not?
You want to visualize, practice this race. The only other thing we haven't mentioned is setting a range of goals. And I don't mean in time. I say as well, sometimes set some other goals. So what I'd like to do in this race is manage my nerves at the start and feel strong halfway through. Something like that. It can sound really wishy-washy sometimes, but I think it really helps take you away from that results-focused outcome to something that's actually a little bit more process-focused that you can go away and learn from for next time. So set a wider range of goals. Obviously, you'll have a time in mind. Obviously, you might have a position in mind, but see some other goals as well. See some other objectives and focus on them to help manage your nerves as well. So it's not just this all or nothing, it's 90 minutes or a complete disaster. Get away from that kind of mindset, because that does it just becomes black and white, and you want something that's a little bit more nuanced and wider than that, and it will help manage those nerves too.
I like that, Jo. Process goals. We talk about that in training in general, not just, waiting for the race to come around, your main race. What are your mini goals that you've got on route to you that's going to help you get to your main goal? I like process goals, or the equivalent in a race as well. That's a very good idea, Jo. I think my process goal should be not to stop for the toilet until at least mile 7 on Sunday. That's what do you reckon? Is that a pretty decent process goal? Maybe we can, do a little debrief next Friday.
Let me just rein this back a bit, yeah. So I know we talked about SMART goals, but maybe that one doesn't need to be that specific. Let me just try not to stop for the toilet. Let's be a little bit more, wishy-washy. Sometimes I think your goals can be too smart. Or not yours, but anybody's goals can be too smart.
Fair enough.
Not black and white, that's what I said. But no, let's see. You can tell us next week how mile 7 went, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it will be good.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm up for it. And if I can just share, the reason I'm looking forward to it quite genuinely is because I have managed my mind, Jo, and because I am somebody that can get a bit nervous about races and build things up a little bit. And I suppose there's an element of me, probably a number of things, personality, who I am, experience previously, having not ran for a long time. I'm a running coach as well. I put a lot out on social media, all those things you sort of feel like, and if you're not careful, you can, or I can put too much pressure on myself. And you just have to have a little word with yourself, when you're out there walking. And just sort of rationalize and just say, look, what does it matter? This is a fun event here. This is, you talk about having fun, one of your mantras. It's important, and how about a goal of, let's see if I can do as well as I can on the day of the race? Well, that's not a bad goal, is it? So, I'm looking forward to it. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be good. It's going to be good because we've got a nice, positive mindset, familiar warm-up routine. Factoring in going to the toilet 25 times before you start.
Good tip. I'll write that down.
It's all good stuff. Guys, I think we've pretty much come to the end of nerves. Hopefully we are all feeling more relaxed, more positive, relishing the challenge ahead, ready to go. And if you want to hear more or go over what we said, then you can always catch up Running with Jake, the podcast, the quick hits, or just generally Running with Jake. Follow Jake, follow me. We will be back next week to find out how the race went, how the nerves management went, and looking forward to it.
I'll give you
Have a good week,
Thanks,
folks.
Jo.
Have a brilliant weekend. Have a fantastic race, Jake. Take care.
Cheers, guys.
That was Running with Jake, the quick hit. Hear the brand new full-length podcast every Wednesday, or catch up now by searching Running with Jake, the podcast.